So the question is, what is the third sector? And in many ways, it's an unanswerable question, but I'll have a go. The third sector is the current kind of fashionable name for what other people call the voluntary sector, what other people call the not-for-profit sector. But in effect, these are organisations that are there because they want to be. That's where the word voluntary comes in. They weren't created by legislation. They're not there to make a living or make a profit. They're there because they have come together as a group of people who see that there's a job to be done and a need to be met, and they have decided that they will organise to meet it, and they are there for no other reason at all. So the third sector is a group of organisations who are all volunteer-led, who are not there to make a profit, and who are there voluntarily, in the purest sense of that word. And all that means is they're there because they want to be. So they have no political interest, they have no financial interest. The only interest they have is in identifying the need and in meeting it. So it's that's what the third sector is. I think when we heard this morning from Councillor McCabe and others about, oh, they wish we would all kind of speak as one, it seems to me that that's an impossible thing to ask. The third sector is simply a group of disparate, diverse organisations, all with their own interests, all with their own concerns, incredibly vibrant, and expecting them all to conform into a pattern and say the same thing is just a non-starter for me. And for my money, I wouldn't call them the third sector either. I'd call them the first sector.
It was an interesting panel debate. So we're only halfway through the morning, and that was the audience asking questions of the panel. And I think it got into the local issues.
I think from today, what we're hoping to build is that opportunity for communities and voluntary organisations to be more involved in making Inverclyde a better place to live. And the reality is, if we want to change that, if we want to make things better for local people, it's going to need everyone working together, and that's everyone playing their part and being involved.
Well, the actions for me is to be aware of the different views of the sector and use that information to inform the decisions that we take in the Inverclyde Alliance and the Council, and to ensure that we are engaging with the sector and that we're hearing the voice of the sector.
Hopefully, we've got a strategy and we've got a plan. This is what we want to do and this is how we're going to do it. And from Riverclyde Home's perspective, I've got to make sure we step up to the plate and support all the people in the room to get to where they want to be, not just for their own organisations, but for Inverclyde as well. There's a lot of positivity in the room, a lot of energy, and most importantly, a commitment to make Inverclyde a better place for everyone, and that's what we're all about.
I came to introduce the findings from our big survey that we did to inform our local outcome improvement plan, and it was called Our Place, Our Future. So it was an engagement across the whole of Inverclyde, trying to get as many people as possible to let us know what they think about some key issues, and that informs the big strategic documents and then locality plans that we're going to develop across 3 of the areas initially. It was really good having that workshop to be able to find out what people thought of the information so far, but also I had a wee chat with them about the draft outcome improvement plan to see, are these priorities that you recognise for Inverclyde, and largely people did, but also to ask them, how do you want to engage with us, how can you get involved, and asking people to sort of email us about the plan and what they think about that as well. So it's useful to have that chat with people, see what they're thinking, and try and raise their awareness as well. Actually, again, it's a bit like the data protection. It's a raising awareness of this is the stuff that we're developing just now and how you can be involved in it.
Today I'm going to give a presentation about asset transfer. So there's new legislation in place in Scotland, which means that community groups, if they're interested in an asset, which could be a building or land, and it's owned by a public authority, they could put in a request to own that asset and do something really good with it for the local community. So that's why I'm here today. Well, it would be really great, I think, if there were some community groups here in the room or elsewhere in Inverclyde, who are interested in the idea of asset ownership and really just want to have a chat to me about whether that's something for them. I'm not there to steer them down a certain route. I don't want to kind of push them down a route and say, this is what you must be doing. But it'd be good to have a chat with them, find out whether this is something of interest. And if so, to kind of give them a helping hand in the right direction.
My role is to engage with fellow third sector organisations, local authority and politicians to speak about the programmes that the Trust offers. We offer 8 programmes that are targeted towards young people specifically from the ages of 13 to 30. Those young people could be disadvantaged, they could have real barriers to learning at school, so it's about engaging them in the education process. So working in positive behaviours, communication skills, finding out what their interests are, what they would like to do with their lives, what their ambitions are, and helping them on that journey. So that's from school, improving their skills and training, so moving into college, or then into possible routes to employment as well. So breaking down any barriers to employment, but it's really about building those networks and relationships, which is why today is so important. So last year we helped to create 24 businesses in Inverclyde, and that's with small contributions from local authority, but it's the impact that we have beyond that. So we might have a contribution, a financial contribution from the local council, but it's what happens after that, the return on investment to the local economy. So it's helping people to make the choice to stay here in Inverclyde and to help the local authority flourish in future.
I will. So my name's Jez Hall. I'm from PB Partners, which is a social enterprise, and I've come to Inverclyde today to talk about participatory budgeting. Basically, it's an idea that any time that money is spent, particularly by the local authority, it could be spent in a way that involved more people. So rather than just a few people in the town hall or elected members having a conversation, could you open up that conversation to as many people in the community as possible over a small part of whatever budget was around? I was asked along to really just introduce the idea and give a presentation about how it's been developing in Scotland. So many local authorities in Scotland have taken on this idea of participatory budgeting. So I was just trying to give people a flavour of how it could be used in many different community settings, from deciding small grants through to even deciding the big budgets of the local authority.
So I'm Sue Robertson. I work with CVS Inverclyde. My job title is Strategic Investment Officer, which sounds very grand. But what I do is work with small groups and organisations, help them to access funding, and particularly try to get Inverclyde the funding that it should get, that it deserves. Obviously we're high on all of the lists that you don't want to be on in terms of multi-deprivation, and we work hard on convincing funders to actually invest in the enterprising projects and local groups that are doing fabulous stuff here. So sort of last week I had a really bizarre day where first thing in the morning I had 2 volunteers who'd set up a little running group who were looking for money for whistles and fluorescent vests. And then at lunchtime I went to talk to our Gown Hospice about their capital fundraising campaign, which is millions of pounds. So sort of a couple of £100 early in the morning and then millions of pounds for lunch. I'm hoping to convince charities and local groups to start working together. I think there's a long competition and there's long histories of one group doesn't talk to another because, I don't know, the granny fell out 20 years ago or 30 years ago. And I think try and get over that and look forward at how groups can work together and probably merge services and look at economies of scale and trying to make things work more effectively and save a bit of money. I think we're working through CVS. We've got some funding from the Big Lottery Awards for All to look at the community transport for providers across Inverclyde, because we have really strong local community transport providers, but they don't work with each other in terms of scheduling services and routes and trips and all that sort of thing. And the public is very confused about how to actually book the transport. So we're looking at a centralised booking system and, you know, buying insurance together for all of the minibuses and transport and trying to make savings. So that's an example where we hope that will bring about positive change by groups working together.
My name is Ali Johnson and I work for the Information Commissioner's Office, and at the moment I am travelling Scotland trying to stop people being so scared about GDPR, or the General Data Protection Regulation that's coming in May next year. So at the moment we have the Data Protection Act, and from 25th of May next year we will have the General Data Protection Regulation, and it's a piece of EU legislation that's coming in, and it's essentially an enhancement of data protection law. So we're going to see for individuals, as individuals we're going to have a lot more rights, and control over what's happening to our personal data. And for organisations, they are going to have to evidence their accountability and be a lot more open, honest and transparent about what they're doing with data.